Okay, I have Brave Irene by William Steig. He wrote and illustrated Sylvester and the Magic Pebble. Maybe some of you have read that one. Brave Irene. Mrs. Bobbin, the dressmaker, was tired and had a bad headache, but she still managed to sew the last stitches on the gown she was making. "It's the most beautiful dress in the whole world," said her daughter Irene. "The Duchess will love it." "It is nice," the mother admitted, "but Dumpling, it's for tonight's ball, and I don't have the strength to bring it. I feel sick." "Poor Mama," said Irene. "I can get it there." "No, Cupcake, I can't let you," said Mrs. Bobbin. "Such a huge package, and it's a long way to the palace. Besides, it's starting to snow." "But I love snow," Irene insisted, and she coaxed her mother into bed, covered her with 2 quilts, and added a blanket for her feet. And then she fixed her some tea with lemon and honey and put more wood in the stove. She's really doing a nice job taking care of her mom. With great care, Irene took the splendid gown down from the dummy and packed it in the big box, a big box with plenty of tissue paper. "Dress warmly, Pudding," her mother called in a weak voice, "and don't forget to button up. It's cold out there and windy." Irene put her fleece-lined boots on, her red hat and her muffler, and her heavy coat and her mittens, and she kissed her mother's hot forehead 6 times, and then once again made sure she was tucked in snugly and slipped out with the big box, shutting the door firmly behind her. Now, at this point in the story, do you have a prediction about what's going to happen next? Maybe you have a prediction based on the cover image, the picture on the front. It was really cold outside, very cold. The wind whirled. Let's see if I can get a little better picture there. Whirled the falling snowflakes about this way, that way, and into Irene's squinting face. She set out on the uphill path to Farmer Bennett's sheep pasture. By the time she got there, the snow was up to her ankles and the wind was worse, and it hurried her along and made her stumble. Irene resented this. The box was problem enough. "Easy does it," she cautioned the wind, leaning back hard against it. She's pretty brave, isn't she? Let's see. Is that a little better? Tough. She's tough. By the middle of the pasture, the flakes were falling thicker. Now the wind drove Irene along so rudely she had to hop, skip, and go helter-skeltering over the knobby ground. Cold snow sifted into her boots and chilled her feet, and she pushed out her lip and hurried on. This was an important errand. When she reached Apple Road, the wind decided to put on a show. It ripped branches from trees and flung them about, swept up and scattered the fallen snow, got in front of Irene to keep her from moving ahead. Irene turned around and pressed on backwards. Whew. She looks determined, doesn't she? "Go home," the wind squalled. "Irene, go home." "I will do no such thing," she snapped. "No such thing, you wicked wind." "Go home," the wind yodeled. "Go home," it shrieked, "or else." And for a short second, Irene wondered if she shouldn't heed the wind's warning, but no, the gown had to get to the Duchess. The wind wrestled her for the package, walloped it, twisted it, shook it, snatched at it, but Irene wouldn't yield. "It's my mother's work," she screamed. And then, oh, whoa, the box was wrenched from her mittened grasp and sent bumbling along in the snow. Irene went after it. She pounced and took hold. But the ill-tempered wind ripped the box open, and the ball gown flounced out and went waltzing through the powdered air with tissue paper attendants. Irene clung to the empty box and watched the beautiful gown disappear. Oh, could you have some empathy for Irene? Can you put yourself in her shoes and think about how she must feel in this situation? How could anything so terribly wrong be allowed to happen? Tears froze on her lashes. Her dear mother's hard work, all those days of measuring, cutting, pinning, stitching for this, and the poor Duchess. Irene decided she would have to trudge on with just the box and explain everything in person. She went shuffling through the snow. Would her mother understand, she wondered, that it was the wind's fault and not hers? Would the Duchess be angry? The wind was howling like a wild animal. Suddenly, Irene stepped in a hole and fell over with a twisted ankle. She blamed it on the wind. Keep quiet, she scolded. You've done enough damage already. You've spoiled everything, everything. The wind swallowed up her words. Did you see that? Didn't make sense to me. Wallowed up. And so I went back and reread it. That's what good readers do, right? If it doesn't make sense, you go back and reread. She sat in the snow with great pain, afraid she wouldn't be able to go on, but she managed to get to her feet and start moving. It hurt. Home, where she longed to be, where she and her mother could be warm together, was far behind. It's got to be closer to the palace, she thought, but where any place was in all this snow, she couldn't be sure. She's a little bit lost, I think, because the snow is making everything look a little different. And now she's hurt and the dress is gone. Can you just imagine how she must feel? She plowed on, dragging furrows with her sore foot, these big long tracks. The short winter day was almost done. Am I still going the right way, she wondered? There was no one around to advise her. Whoever else there was in this snow-covered world was far, far away and safe indoors, even the animals in their burrows. She went plodding on. It's getting darker, isn't it? Soon night took over. She knew in the dark, that the muffled snow was still falling. She could feel it. She was cold and alone in the middle of nowhere. Irene was lost. She had to keep moving. She was hoping she'd come to a house, any house at all, and be taken in. She badly needed to be in someone's arms. The snow was above her knees now. She shoved her way through it, clutching the empty box. My goodness. Oh, do you see? She was asking how long a small person could keep this struggle up when she realized it was getting lighter. There was a soft glow coming from somewhere below her. She waded towards this glow and soon was gazing, See, I looked back and reread, gazing down a long slope at a brightly lit mansion. It had to be the palace. Irene pushed forward with all her strength and sloosh, swamp, she plunged downward and was buried. Oh my gosh. She had fallen off a little cliff. Only her hat and the box in her hand stuck out above the snow. Even if she could call for help, no one would hear her. Her body shook, her teeth chattered. Why not freeze to death, she thought, and let all these troubles end? Why not? She was already buried. That is very dark. Yikes, she's in a bad situation. And never see her mother's face again? Her good mother who smelled like fresh baked bread? In an explosion of fury, she flung her body about to free herself and was finally able to climb up on her knees and look around. How to get down to that glittering palace? As soon as she raised the question, she had the answer. Look at that. She laid the box down and climbed aboard, but it pressed into the snow and stuck. She tried again, and this time, instead of climbing on, she leaped, and the box shot forward like a what? It's a simile. It's saying it's like something else, like a sled. The wind raced after Irene, but it couldn't keep up. In a moment, she would be with people again, inside where it was warm. The sledge slowed and jerked to a stop on paving stones. The time had come to break the bad news to the Duchess. With the empty box clutched to her chest, Irene strode nervously towards the palace. Oh my gosh, look at that, you guys. But then her feet stopped moving. And her mouth fell open. You should do that. She stared. Maybe this was impossible, and yet there it was, a little way off and over to the right, hugging the trunk of a tree, the beautiful ball gown. The wind was holding it there. Mama, Irene shouted, Mama, I found it. She managed somehow, despite the wind's meddling, to get the gown off the tree and back in its box. And in another moment, she was at the door of the palace, and she knocked twice. With the big brass knocker, and the door opened and she burst in. Oh, they look so happy to see her. She was welcomed by the cheering servants and a delirious duchess. They couldn't believe that she had come over the mountain in such a storm all by herself. She had to tell this whole story, every detail, and she did. And then she asked to be taken right back to her sick mother, but it was out of the question, they said. The road that ran around the mountain couldn't be cleared until morning. Don't fret, child, said the Duchess. Your mother is surely sleeping now. We'll get you there first thing tomorrow. Irene was given a good dinner as she sat by the fire, the moisture streaming off her clothes. The Duchess, meanwhile, got into her freshly ironed gown before the guests began arriving in their sleighs. There's the Duchess. Is that Irene? What a wonderful ball it was. The Duchess in her new gown was like a bright star in the sky. Irene in her ordinary dress was radiant. She was swept up into dances by handsome aristocrats who kept her feet off the floor to spare her ankle. Her mother would enjoy hearing all about it. Early the next morning, the snow had long since ceased falling, and Mrs. Bobbin woke up from a good night's sleep feeling much improved. She hurried about and got a fire going on the cold stove, and then she went to look in on Irene. But Irene's bed was empty. She ran to the window and gazed at the white landscape. No one out there. Snow powder fell from the branch of a tree. Where's my child? Mrs. Bobbin cried. She whipped on her coat to go out and find her. I bet you can have empathy for Mrs. Bobbin too, and you can think about how terrified she must be when her daughter wasn't back, right? When she pulled the door open, a wall of drift faced her, but peering over it, she could see a horse-drawn sleigh hastening up the path, and seated on the sleigh between two large footmen was Irene herself, asleep but smiling. Would you like to hear the rest? Well, there was a bearded doctor in the back of the sleigh, and the Duchess had sent Irene's mother a ginger cake with white icing, some oranges and a pineapple, and spice candy of many flavors, along with a note saying how much she cherished her gown and what a brave and loving person Irene was, which, of course, Mrs. Bobbin knew better than the Duchess. Wow, brave Irene. She surely was brave. My goodness.